Welcome back. No more chocobos for now. Instead, we've got 3 very different tracks. We crossed the swamp to evade Midgar Zalem, only to find Sephiroth has already dealt with the snake. Jesus, I don't want to mess with this guy. Wait, who are we chasing again? We enter the Mithril mines and get our next track. Uematsu pulls out all the mystical stops, harps and bells and reverb and choirs. The music is kind of a general theme for naturally magical places, like Mithril mines and later the Ancient Forest or the Sleeping Forest, both kinds of forest. The whole track is pretty simple, it's built around this rhythm. Just 4 eighth notes, and around them Uematsu created more and more layers. There are some cool parts. I really like this transition early in the song, from the spherical choir to the faster paced melody. This part is also pretty nice. Here the track gets a bit darker and more subdued. One kind of interesting thing about this track, it loops, but it's not split in the middle like all the other ones. Instead, there are several parts, and only after this transition happens at 2:25 does it come back around. In a way, this song is the theme to our quest. We are following Sephiroth around the world, always one step behind but always getting closer. Along the way we keep finding clues and, as usual, more mysteries than answers. I never really thought about it before, but a large chunk of Final Fantasy VII, about half of Disc 1, the second half, is basically one long chase, but a slow and methodical chase, which takes us to a lot of new and mysterious places. This track is called Fort Condor, but it's really not. The real Fort Condor theme inexplicably appears at the end of Disc 4 and is called Open Your Heart. Instead, we hear this music during a mini-game which we play at Fort Condor. It's a pretty fun one too. It's kind of a mini tower defense kind of game. Actually, I think it would make for a pretty nice mobile game. Although I have to admit that I rarely play those. So, what is Fort Condor? Well, the name says it all. It's a fort with a giant condor on top. The backstory to this place is actually pretty cool. It's built on an old Mako reactor, which the condor has chosen as its nesting place. The people who live here are trying to protect the eggs from Shinra, and that's where we come in. We are given the task of defending the nest from the Shinra troops. The music itself is pretty cool and epic, even if it does sound a bit like a parody of an older strategy game theme. With the marching drums and that very repetitive brass melody, the whole thing sounds like it belongs in a different game, like Warcraft, or maybe even Final Fantasy IV or V. It gets a bit more serious when it comes to this part. Even though the track gets a little more complex with layered melodies and call and response parts later, that simplistic rhythm stays in place until the last part, when the time signature suddenly changes to triple meter. And there is a key change as well. So there is a little more to this tune than you would suspect at first. All in all, it's a fitting and also pretty cool little track, and most importantly, it seems like Uematsu is once again having a lot of fun. I love this one. It's like the most upbeat thing ever. Even though it's the theme for our main secondary villain, I actually hum this to myself more than any other Final Fantasy track. While in the Mithril mine, we meet the Turks and their newest member, Elena, who apparently talks too much, which leads to her telling us that 1. The Turks are also looking for Sephiroth, and 2. He's heading for Junon Harbor. So we head there too and walk right into a huge Shinra military parade headed by the new president, Rufus. Fun fact number 1. There is something called diegetic music, which means music that is part of the story in a movie or a video game, so the characters can actually hear it and might even comment on it. This is something that directors like Quentin Tarantino or the Coen brothers often use in their movies. Rufus's welcoming ceremony is, as far as I can tell, the only diegetic song on the whole FF7 soundtrack. Because Yuffie actually mentions it, but only if you've recruited her at this point, which is not a given, so it might be an Easter egg, but I like to think that this music is actually on a constant loop in Junon while Rufus is there. I think it's kinda cool how the music becomes sort of muffled once we enter shops and homes too. This also points to the music being diegetic and being part of the parade. Alright, let's get to the music. Well, it's a march, and when I first heard this, I was kind of thrown by how upbeat it was, but most military marches actually do sound very upbeat. Especially the one that this reminds me of the most, which is The Stars and Stripes Forever by John Philip Sousa. There might be marches that are closer, but this is the first one that comes to mind when I think about it. The track itself is broken up into 3 parts: the introduction, which sets the stage for the whole thing, the main part, which is written in a major key, and the third part, which is only 8 bars long and is written in a minor key. I love how Uematsu uses all the tricks in the book to create a typical military march. Strong timpanis and cymbals in the percussion section, the main melody played by a trumpet and that trill on the flute, you know, this effect. But it's still an original melody, at least I think so. If this is actually ripped off from somewhere, let me know in the comments below, but if it's not, then I really think this is a pretty outstanding composition. Fun fact number 2. This song can be heard in Final Fantasy IX when the Tantalus Orchestra plays it after crashing the theater ship in the haunted forest. This is the perfect song for your alarm clock in the morning. In terms of getting your spirits up before breakfast, it's like walking on sunshine times 100. And that was it for part 12. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for part 13. Does anybody else think this is the most annoying minigame of all time?